So I am here for our third artist interview for ArtConnects, and I am with Cortni Harant. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your work as a teacher, an educator, and the type of artwork that you do as an artist.
I actually have taught for well over 25 years and started my career in Arizona, although I am a Montanan. In terms of teaching, I really feel like my job is to do a couple of different things, one of which is to build their toolbox, and the second is to help them find their voice.
What art medium do you prefer to work in?
Actually, my degree is in painting and drawing,
Okay.
but I really find myself drawn to sculptural type of grounds, not traditional grounds that you would think of.
Mhm.
Even when I do what you might consider more of a traditional oil painting, I always stretch my own canvas, develop my own scale and depth that I want for it. I don't go to a clearinghouse and just buy a canvas off the shelf. I really love mixed media in terms of producing a work. I like the patinas that are created when you mix media and maybe using media in not a traditional way. I think it just builds a nice nuance to it and a nice patina to the work in itself.
Do you feel that the artwork that you do inspires your educating, your teaching, or vice versa?
That's a great question. I think as teachers, because as a high school art teacher, regardless of where you're at, a lot of times you're the jack of all trades, right? A lot of times you get the studio artists and they strictly work in paint. They strictly work in, although, I think that kind of mindset is changing. I know in conversations with some of the professors at MSU, they're really thinking about being a maker, and you figure the media that's going to be the best to serve your voice at the moment. And so I guess that's more kind of the way I'm bent or lean. And I think that probably being an art teacher has helped promote that, just because I get the opportunity to work in clay and printmaking and painting and drawing. I'm not just in my studio with one media all the time. My house was built in 1927, and I restored the house myself. And so I've also done a lot of carpentry work. And actually, there's a couple of pieces of mine up behind me. And so I think that my construction trades have also informed my work. I didn't realize I had such a thing for boxes until actually the last couple of years. I'm always drawn to boxes. I always make my own frames. And a lot of the things that I've learned through doing construction trades has helped inform my technical ability to then produce works of art. I'll try to just, do sketchbook exercises just to keep myself honed and that kind of thing. But I don't find that that's where the inspiration for larger works of art come from. It usually comes from the head and the heart.
How has the pandemic affected how you work with your students and also how you work as an artist? And has it affected where you work? And do you work within your home, or do you work somewhere else, or has that changed at all?
In terms of my students, it was really an interesting ride. Because, and actually Matt with KRTV just did an article on the CPS numbers of calls, because we're mandated reporters. We're the eyes and ears of the community to keep kids safe. And at Great Falls High, and I can't speak for CMR, we built that beautiful new hub at our building, and some staff are a little dismissed, but it's almost a second home to a lot of our kids. They're there at 7 a.m. and they're not leaving until 8 p.m. They just hang out. And they're doing that because that's a better place to be than anywhere else, right? They're not choosing to hang out at school because home is such a wonderful place to be. CPS has seen this dramatic decrease in calls. Why? Because nobody's getting to see John or Jane or June and make sure that they're okay. Throughout the pandemic, I would periodically just, a survey like, how you doing? Are your basic needs being met? The whole Maslow's thing, right? Do you have shelter? Do you have food? Do you have clothes? How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing academically? And by and large, I think it was the emotional thing that was the hardest for my students. I did find, and I tried to kind of gear a lot of my studio assignments with a lot of broadness during the pandemic so that they had an opportunity to really kind of figure out where their needs were and address them through their studio work. Just like we were talking about as artists, we have our own voice that we are using to express through our work. And I was trying to encourage my students to use their art as a medium for expression. So whether it's the things that bring them joy, whether it's the things that are frustrating to them right now, but really trying to find a way to express that in a positive way that might, some of our students and as visual artists, the ones that are really geared that way, we don't necessarily express ourselves really well through words. We do it better.
That is so true. Yeah.
I very much so come from a very personal place with my artwork, and that personal place might be influenced by the world around me, as was the piece that's in this exhibition. I think that, again, as artists, we're responding, and of course you're seeing this in the whole Black Lives Matter. I mean, people are doing murals and works of art, and not just in visual art mediums, but in other mediums as well, to not just use one voice to communicate this need and concern. And I think as artists, we do that all the time. And I always tend to lean to like a personal spot of what I'm dealing with or where the world is around me and how I perceive it. And then that's where my idea comes from. And the piece that I currently created for this exhibition was created when the COVID, I mean, actually I dropped what I was doing and turned my mind and eye to COVID-19 and what was happening with that. And I think being a teacher gives you an interesting perspective too, because as we were all staying at home, I was still connected to 130 other little individuals, right?
Yeah.
And so talking to parents and to students and finding out how not only were they doing academically, but how were they doing emotionally with all of this. And I think everything is coming to hopefully a positive rise in terms of change.
What is one piece of advice? I think this is a perfect segue. One piece of
advice on what, Eileen?
One piece of advice you would give to young people or aspiring artists?
I would have to say the number one thing is believe in yourself. I think that as artists, sometimes, I mean, we're putting ourselves out there, right? We're putting our heart out on our sleeve. And it's sometimes hard when there's critics in the world, and self-doubt is really easy to fall into. And so that would be my biggest advice to any person, whether they're young or old, is believe in yourself, believe in your voice, and don't let the naysayers stop you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add today that I didn't cover?
Just maybe a big shout out and thank you to the Russell for partnering with the art teachers and the community and giving us a space and an outlet to exhibit our own work. We do diligently work very hard at making sure that our students' voice gets heard in our community, but often don't get a place to have our own voice. So thank you so much, Eileen.